Hey guys, so I wanted to take a few minutes this evening to go over some important things for our quiz tomorrow. So I'd like to start off kind of very generally going over some of the rules that we're going to need to be aware of for tomorrow. So let's talk about some of those equations that we learned over the course of the last 3 weeks. We learned an equation for rate of change, and another word for slope. We sometimes refer to that as slope. And we talked about the formula we need to know there is delta y over delta x, which is rise over run. That's one thing. We talked about needing to know slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b. That m stands for the rate of change or the slope, and that b represents our y-intercept. Okay. And finally, we talked about point slope form. And point slope form we are going to sometimes use when we have multiple points and we want to write an equation, and that's going to look like y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And as we've done in class, we can use point slope form to take it to that slope-intercept form pretty easily just by doing a little bit of basic math. And we're going to have an opportunity in the rest of this video to see how we can use that. All right, so I'm going to move forward. What I've decided to do is, since we didn't get a chance to finish going over all of the review packet that you've had this week, I'm actually going to take the time in this video to go through numbers 16 through 22 and make sure that you're answering these questions correctly. So let's start out here with number 16. Let's see, there we go. Identify the slope and the y-intercept of y equals negative 5x. So this equation right here is being written in the form y equals mx plus b. The slope is represented by the letter m, and the intercept is represented by the letter b. So when I'm looking for the slope, what I'm asking is, what is sitting right next to the x? Well, the thing sitting right next to the x in this particular question is a negative 5. That means this has a slope of negative 5. And of course, a negative slope means that this line would need to be decreasing. And then I need to look for the y-intercept. And the y-intercept in this question, there's nothing over here, so it's just a plus 0. And that would indicate to me that this line is going to go right through the origin. It has a y-intercept right through the origin. All right, let's go on to number 17. On number 17, it says to write the equation in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. The difference between slope-intercept form and what was originally given to me is that in slope-intercept form, y is all by itself. Y is all by itself here. And in the form that I was given, y is not by itself. So I'm simply going to get y by itself. To isolate y, I've got to get rid of that 2, and I've got to get rid of that negative 4x. Well, the outside layer of that onion is that negative 4x. And I get rid of a negative 4x by adding 4x on both sides. And that's going to give me 2y equals 4x plus 8. And then to get y by itself, I can divide everything by 2. And I end up with y equals 2x plus 4. Now this is written in that form, and I can pretty easily identify the slope and the y-intercept. The slope sits right next to the x, so the slope is 2. The y-intercept is by itself. It's my constant out there, and that answer will be 4. Let's go check out 18. 18 was a lot like 17. In number 18, I needed to write this in slope-intercept form. I'm trying to get that y by itself. It has a minus 4 next to it and then a 6x next to that. In order to get rid of a 6x, I'm going to have to do a minus 6x on both sides. That's going to leave me with negative 4y equals negative 6x minus 4. To get the y by itself, I need to divide by negative 4. And that's going to leave me y equals 6 over 4x. Notice that I made it is a positive. And then negative 4 divided by negative 4 is plus 1. We could certainly simplify this fraction if we chose to do so. 6 over 4 can be rewritten as 3 over 2. Let's go back there. Cool. And we have y equals 3 over 2x plus 1. So the slope is 3 over 2. And the intercept is 1. Okay, so on to number 19. Number 19, they give me a line and they want the function, they want the equation of that line. So we've got to identify the y-intercept. That's pretty easy to do because we're just going to look at our picture for the y-intercept. And it's happening right there at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4. And we need to identify the slope. So I've got to pick 2 points. If I want to identify the slope, I need to pick out 2 easy-to-use points. And I'm going to pick out that y-intercept. That was a pretty good point for me. And I'm going to pick out, well, there's a nice point right here that we can use. And then we're going to do our rise and our run. This is up by 1, 2, 3, and over by 1, 2. 3 over 2 is my slope. And so my equation will be y equals 3 over 2x minus 4. Cool. Let's check out number 20. Give us a couple of points. 5, comma, negative 1. 5, comma, negative 1. There's a point right there. And they give us the point 5, comma, 5, which is sitting right there. And when we connect those points, we notice that we end up getting a perfectly vertical line. The slope of a vertical line is undefined. Remember, that line is so steep that we can't even give it a number. It is straight up and down. The y-intercept of this function, well, there isn't one. We write a little symbol that says there's no y-intercept because it doesn't cross the y-axis anywhere. And then our x-intercept, it's happening right there at the number 5. Our x-intercept is 5. And as we talked about in class, anytime we have an equation that doesn't have a slope, so if it is a vertical or a horizontal line, our equation is the intercept. This is our equation. It's going to say x equals 5. That is our equation. If I wanted to go through this process with a horizontal line, we're going to end up with something like y equals something. All right. On number 21, we needed to graph these equations, and here's one of those examples. Y equals negative 4. If I think about y equals mx plus b, there's no mx in that equation. We're missing an mx. We only have an intercept. So we know it crosses through the intercept negative 4, but with no slope being given here, that slope must have been 0, because 0 times x would be 0. It would go away. My y-intercept is negative 4. And if I have 0 slope and it goes through negative with no x-intercept. For part B, x equals 3. Okay? Our x-intercept is going to be 3. Again, this doesn't have a slope associated with it. This is going to pass through 3, but without a slope. That means that we're going to be a nice vertical line again. The slope is going to be undefined. And our y-intercept does not exist. There's no y-intercept here. So when we see an equation that simply says y equals a number or x equals a number, we're looking at those vertical and horizontal lines. And our final question on this worksheet was number 22. This, again, y equals negative 2x plus 4 is written in y equals mx plus b. The quickest and easiest thing for us to all look for is b, the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept in this question is plus 4. So y-intercept of plus 4, it might be that one. This has a y-intercept of 2, so I know that's not the right answer. This has a y-intercept of 4, so it might be that one. This has a y-intercept of 4, so it might be that one. Cool. So we've eliminated one of our choices. And then over here we have a slope of negative 2. And if our slope is negative 2, that means that the line must be going down. Well, that's going to rule out A. A cannot be my answer because the line for A is going up. The difference between choice C and choice D is just a matter of what the actual slope is. So let's find the slope. I like the point there and the point there. That's down 2 and over 1. I like a point there and I like a point there, and that's down 1 and over 2. Okay, so D is not the right answer because D has a slope of down 1 over 2. C is the correct answer because the slope is correct. So my answer for that question should have been C. Okay, last thing I want to do before we one question here. I want us to write an equation for the line that passes through 7, 15, and 3, let's go with 7. 3, 7. So here I am. I'm going to make my x and y chart first, because the first and easiest thing I can do when you give me 2 points is find the rate of change. To get from 15 to 7, I have to go down by 8. To get from 7 to 3, I have to get down by 4. And so my rate of change is going to be negative 8 over negative 4. Negative 8 over negative 4 is equal to 2. Now that we have our slope, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can get through to the equation, and then you can play the video again when you're ready to make sure you did it correctly. All right, so let's check it out. I'm going to go to point slope here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and I'm going to plug in some points. Y minus, let's see, I would like to use this point right here because the numbers are smaller. So let's go ahead and use that point. So we're going to go y minus 7, because the y was 7, equals m, my m was 2, times x minus x1, we'll call 3. And that's going to give me y minus 7. And when I have a number outside of a parentheses, I can use the distributive property, 2x minus 6. And then, to get y by itself, I can add 7 to both sides, and I'm going to end up with y equals 2x plus 1. If I want to double check that that works, go back to the table and pick the other point. Input 7. If I input 7 down here, I'm going to get y equals 2 times 7 plus 1. Well, 2 times 7 is 14, and 14 plus 1 is 15. My equation works. You can take a moment, or take the next few minutes, 15 minutes maybe, study over your notes, make sure that you're comfortable for tomorrow's quiz. If you need any extra practice, there is tutoring before school tomorrow. Feel free to come on in and get some extra help if you need any, all right? I hope you guys have a good night, and good luck studying.